they don't even have an established great player like Chris Paul, say, for Phoenix. So you can do both, Tone. I think you have to do both to capture the essence of what's going on in that series.
Well, Trae Young is establishing himself as a great player, and I don't think you have to do both in this particular sentence. I think the Hawks are irrelevant to this game. I think it's the collapse of the Sixers. The Philadelphia 76ers, you talked about Simmons, you're right about Simmons. If you put him on the line, he can't hit the shot. 32.8 from the line in the playoffs. And Joel Embiid, and I know people are going to say he had 37, but in the fourth quarters of games 4 and 5, which the Hawks beat the Sixers in, Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, 1 out of 15 in the fourth quarters. Mike, if you are a team that says we can win an NBA championship, you have to have a player who says when things go bad, put the load on me, I'll get us through this. And I don't see that player on that team right now, that healthy player who says put the load on me.
I agree, Tony, but Atlanta seems to have him. Atlanta seems to have multiples. Trae Young is establishing himself. He's like 22 years old. He is not an established playoff star, but he's making himself that.
He's establishing. I said that.
He's making himself. Wow, the Sixers, man, whew. The Clippers were without Kawhi Leonard, but still beat the Jazz in Utah last night. Paul George, your boy, Tony, lived up to his self-styled nickname of Playoff P, putting up 37 points, 16 boards, 5 assists. The Clippers are now up 3-2 with Game 6 right here across the street in L.A. Friday night. Tony, how do you explain last night's result?
Okay, I'm going to explain it this way. Paul George, who I sit here and rip on a regular basis, because I don't think he's ever done a clutch thing in his NBA career, rose up last night. When the best player on that team, Kawhi Leonard, could not play, Paul George played. Let's go over those numbers again. 37 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. I didn't see this coming. All credit to Paul George for living up to the nickname that he gave himself. On the other end of this game, Utah, and this is surprising to me, you are at home, you are the number 1 seed, and the best player in the series is not playing. You have to win this game. So Utah seems to me to be what we thought they were for a long period of time. A team that is wonderful in the regular season, Mike, but does not have that second playoff gear. Because you have to win this one.
Yeah, Tony, I'm with you on this. You can easily, justifiably, go back to your December, January, and February positions on Utah until with a lot of nudging from me poking the bear, you said, all right, I grudgingly give in. They look great because they did look great. And, Tony, the switcheroo is legitimate, too, because, look, Mike Conley, Tony, I told you the absence of Mike Conley, everybody has to do a little bit too much for his comfort level when Mike Conley is not there, particularly Donovan Mitchell. And I presume if this has been a problem in the whole series, that going into Game 6 is going to be a problem in that, too, if Mike Conley's not there. And yes, playoff P, he ripped him. I mean, he was as clutch. This was a miniature Kevin Durant performance. I mean, it wasn't, Kevin Durant 2 nights ago, but wow, Paul George was great. The question now is, Tony, with all the pressure coming from back here, back behind me at Staples Center tomorrow night, is Paul George going to be able to deliver something akin to that? Not duplication, but akin to it.
The simple fact of the matter is that Utah had its best player on the court, Donovan Mitchell, and the Clippers did not have their best player on the court. And I don't know how Utah looks at each other in a locker room and convinces each other they will win 6 and 7. We move on. This is a stunner. Rick Carlisle is out as head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. Carlisle says it was solely his decision to leave the team after 13 seasons, 9 trips to the playoffs, and 1 title. He had 2 years left on his deal. He says he looks forward to his next coaching challenge. Just yesterday, Dallas dumped GM Donnie Nelson after 24 years. Wilbon, what on earth is going on down in Big D?
I told you at the end of the show, when it was in our big finish, that Donnie Nelson was gone after 24 years. I said, Tony, this is big trouble. Because this affects directly Luka Doncic, who apparently is very fond of Donnie Nelson. Now, what's going on in Big D is turmoil, Tony. This is not just whether Dak will get his money. Luka going to get his money. He's going to get it from somewhere, $200 million of it, because he's a first-team All-NBA player. But when you have Rick Carlisle and Donnie Nelson, Tony, these guys, if you just mentioned with Rick Carlisle, they've been around forever there. It's been stable. They haven't had the turmoil of maybe some other NFL, NBA franchises. But now, Tone, if you have a superstar, we've seen stars in the state of Texas force their way out of there. So you think Luka Doncic can't do it if he's not happy with who's coaching him and running the franchise? Of course he can, Tony. I don't know specifically where this is going, but it's been a problem that's percolated a little bit all season, and now it's percolating a lot.
So let's deal with this like adults. If you own the Dallas Mavericks, you have to go to Luka Doncic, and you have to ask him, is this okay with you? Because if it isn't, he's going to leave. I love Rick Carlisle. He now vaults to the head of the line of every single coaching vacancy in the league. He gets whatever job he wants to get.
Can he get to
but
Milwaukee
you can always
tonight?
get a coach, Mike. You can always get a coach, Mike, and you can always get a GM. You can't always get Luka Doncic. So I have to assume that Luka Doncic has given his blessing to Rick Carlisle not being anymore. Because if he hasn't, he's gone the first opportunity, and then Dallas recedes into the ooze of the NBA. That's what happens.
Look, again, you're right about Rick Carlisle, who I have known since he was at the University of Virginia playing basketball with Ralph Sampson, among others. And, Tony, that is what Luka Doncic didn't give his blessing to Donnie Nelson being fired, which is what happened, okay? He didn't give his blessing to that. So there's some real big fences to mend right now in Dallas, and all the players are going to become available. Again, if I was the Milwaukee Bucks, I would send a G6 right now for Rick Carlisle. I'd have him on the bench tonight.
Wimbledon will be without two huge names. Rafael Nadal withdrew from the tournament and the Olympics this morning, saying he's listening to his body and hopes to prolong his career. And Naomi Osaka's team announced this afternoon she will also miss Wimbledon in order to take time with family and friends, but she will play in the Olympics. Let's take them one at a time, Wilbon. Does Nadal's decision make you feel more bullish or bearish on his future prospects?
Well, Nadal's career is winding up. Naomi Osaka is still taking off. I mean, they're in completely different places, and their reasons for withdrawing are different. I mean, we talked about this with Nadal. We hinted at it this past week earlier, coming out of the French Open. He plays like a linebacker, right? I mean, he is not light on his feet, like Peter Pan, like Djokovic. I mean, so he understands what he needs to do for his body to be ready for these things. And Osaka has a completely different reason. She talked about dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression. That, Tony, leads into her thinking and her decision-making, although the Olympics are a different matter. I'm sure there are contractual ties, given she is the wealthiest female athlete in the world. So these are very different circumstances. Nadal, it's kind of like right. Federer. Federer took some time off. He won a couple of times toward the end of that when he came out of it. Now we'll see if Nadal is as fortunate.
Yes, one is dealing with physical issues and one is dealing with emotional issues. One is looking at the end of his career and one is looking at the beginning of her career and trying to maintain equilibrium to have a long career. She has to play in the Olympics. She's Japanese. She has to play in the Olympics. It's in Japan. I understand that. It's very possible if the Olympics were somewhere else, she would say, I'm going to shut it down and take a whole bunch of time off. But I don't think that's possible in Naomi Osaka's case, being Japanese. In Nadal's case, you make a very good point. In 2016, I think it was, when Roger Federer was 35, which is Nadal's age now, he dropped out of the Olympics. He dropped out of the French Open. He came back, or he dropped out of the U.S. Open. He came back. He won the Australian at an advanced age, didn't go to the French, and won Wimbledon. So Nadal is probably saying, when people say I'm listening to my body, that's an ominous sign. It means they see the end of a career. And if he shuts it down long enough, he can always win the French, it seems to me. But I told you, Mike, during the match with Djokovic, I texted you. I said, boy, Nadal's up 5-1 and he looks old. He does not. He's smooth, but the power isn't there. He's old,
Tony. By tennis terms, or any tennis measure, he is old.
Let's take a break, but coming up, what should... It's time for toss-up. Two men enter, one man leaves, finishes the show, then wonders if declaring himself the winner of toss-up was actually an accurate assessment of the result or just a hollow attempt at self-validation. What's first?
Toss-up. What should the Mets do with Jacob deGrom? Let him pitch or make him rest.
All right, so DeGrom left against the Cubs last night with a bad shoulder after 3 innings, faced 9 batters, struck out 8 batters. His previous start, he went 6 against the Padres. He had elbow pain, gave up 1 hit, struck out 10. DeGrom says he's sick of this, that these problems are minor. He threw 10 pitches at 100 miles an hour or higher last night. He's thrown 138 this year. Next highest starter has thrown a total of 9. Mike, he's the best pitcher in baseball. There's no question about that. But if I'm the Mets, I look at where I am in the standings. I'm 5 clear in the NL East. I look in my rearview mirror at Matt Harvey, who continued to pitch and is now on his 4th team since being with the Mets because his arm went out. And I make sure that DeGrom misses at least 1 start.
I'll bid you and say 2 starts. If we were playing What's the Word, this would be Koufaxian. I mean, the brilliance of it would remind you of Sandy Koufax. And the arm trouble, while it's not specifically the same, will remind you of Sandy Koufax. And so 2 starts, Tony. 5 games up. That was the first thing I did was look at the standings. 2 starts. And you take it out of his hands, at least for those 2 starts. And then if he's okay, you wander, sort of looking through spread fingers at the start that would become the 3rd. But I'd sit him down for 2.
Next.
Toss up, better Jose Iglesias catch, the first one or the second one?
All right, let me set this up. The Angels are playing the A's yesterday. Iglesias is at shortstop. Here's the first catch. He ends up backhanding the ball, not even facing the infield. His body is completely twisted around. Here's the second catch. He reaches behind himself. It's a longer run, I think. I think the second catch, Mike, is more dramatic because of the way he reaches back, and then he does that ballet move. But I honestly think the first catch is harder, and here's why. The left fielder is coming at him. They could be a collision. The left fielder could call him off the ball. At the very last minute, he relies on instinct. He makes the catch. I think it's a little better.
Yeah, the second one, he's got traffic in both. More in the second, it seems to me. But, Tony, I'm guessing the first one is caused by wind and sun. At least one of those 2. It looks like both of them. I mean, I spent a lot of springtime this time of year in Oakland on that piece of property the last 6 years until now. I don't associate any wind with it. There's like no wind, but there's sun. You could lose yourself, and they're both great catches, Tony. But the second one was that gave me a wow.
Great fielder. That's it. I win. Let's take one last break. Still to come, does Zion have a problem with the Pelicans?
And the White Sox, the Southsiders, the Pale Hose, suddenly have the best record in baseball, but are they going to stay on top?
You know what, Mike? Over the course of a baseball season, 7 or 8 teams suddenly have the best record in baseball. And that's how it works most of the time.
Nobody holds it all.
29 years ago, the Suns traded Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang to Philadelphia for the round mound of rebound. Barkley had been a great player for the 76ers, but they never got out of the Eastern Conference with him. In his first year in the Valley of the Sun, Barkley was voted league MVP, and his Suns got to the NBA Finals, losing to Michael Jordan's Bulls in Barkley's only final. Barkley still has a house in Phoenix, and he likes to talk about the rally in the Valley. Barkley had the same bad luck as John Stockton, Karl Malone, Clyde Drexler, and others of bumping into Jordan. But look at Barkley now. He's beloved. He's the most important voice in sports. And every day it looks like he's having fun. Who wouldn't want to be him?
Tony, house in Scottsdale, not Phoenix, but it's more than a technicality. And as Charles says on days that are not 117 like today, as he says on the 280 perfect ones, hey boy, this is why we live here. And he is a civic treasure in the Valley. And it is a rally in the Valley right now because of the way Chris Paul and Devin Booker and his sons are playing.
Happy trails to Katie Ledecky's competition in the 200 and 1500. Bethesda, Maryland's own Katie Ledecky qualified for the Olympics in the 200-meter and 1500-meter events by winning both finals last night. Ledecky has won Olympic gold in the 200 before, but this is the first time ever that women are competing in the 1500, and Ledecky had barely more than an hour between both races last night. Ledecky's time in the 200 of 1 minute 55.11 seconds is 2 seconds slower than Australia's Ariane Titmus swam at her trials, but you have to think Ledecky held back a little so she'd be strong in the grueling 30-lap 1500. And Ledecky's time in the 1500, 15 minutes, 44.50 seconds, was the fastest time in the world this year.
Tony, if I'm talking about a Mount Rushmore of Bethesda, Maryland sports, Walter Johnson and Katie Ledecky, right? Now at Stone Ridge High School's own. I know a little bit about that. It's her and Walter Johnson. Anybody else? Anybody else second other than Katie Ledecky?
Well, Tim Kirchin, but I think it's Katie Ledecky.
We're going with Katie.
Here
Sorry,
we go to
Timmy.
the big, and it's a wonderful family, and she's a great kid. Here we go, the big finish. The Athletic reports
do it.
tensions between Zion and the Pelicans. Your thoughts?
Tony, this is huge tension. I mean, it's not unlike Luka and the Mavericks. Something has to give. Don't know what it's going to be. Coaching, front office, what's going to happen there too? Lots of drama. Canadians, even their series with the Golden Knights. As I told you, you got it wrong. Lightning and Islanders tonight. Who you got?
I can't get it wrong any more than you've gotten it wrong lately. I'm taking the hometown Islanders. The White Sox are tied with the Giants for the best record in baseball. You think they can keep that up?
Yeah, they've kept it up with major injuries to start the season. They were projected to be a serious contender. Yeah. They took the series from the Rays, by the way. Shohei Ohtani pitches tonight against the Tigers. You excited about that?
Yes, he hit his 19th homer yesterday. It's Babe Ruth. He's pitching tonight. It's great. Last one, Nets at Bucks Game 6 tonight. Who you got?
Strangely enough, Tony, I think I'm going to take the Bucks to win this game. Examine me later, because I don't know what I'm doing picking them.
Coach Bood, happy to hear that. Out of time. Try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
Not the rest of my comments this week. I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the app or Apple Podcast. And now, Tony, here is SportsCenter.
Scotty Dreyer.